Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the OPFS podcast. This episode is coming to you from Motherwell and from Marion Fellows constituency office. And I'm joined by Marion Fellows MP for Wishaw and Motherwell herself, as well as young parent Kelly Marie and her son, who being very quiet in the background there. So to start off with, Marion, just wanted to ask you to give yourself a little bit of introduction, just say something perhaps about the constituency which we're in and also what led you into politics in the first place.
Well, we're in Motherwell, my Motherwell constituency office, and I'm Marion Fellows MP for Motherwell and Wishaw since 2015. And that was a huge shock when I got elected. I stood a few times for various posts at Scottish Parliament. I got elected as a councillor, and after the 2014 referendum, I decided to throw my hat back in the ring for the Westminster seat, and I, much to my surprise, got elected, and I've been elected twice since then as well. I got involved in politics because I like helping folk, I suppose, basically. And my background was I was a trade unionist, I worked in further education, and I spent a lot of time working with students as well and trying to help sort out their problems. And basically, I fell into it by accident, and I think because I'm older, and I was older when I got elected, I bring a lifetime of experience in lots of different things, and I think that's been to my advantage. When I became an MP, one of the first things I did was we set up a poverty action network, which is where I first really got in touch with One Parent Families Scotland and was really made aware of the good, fabulous work they do and how much they help young people. But single parents have a really hard time, and they're not always recognised, and there's I think even still a bit of people think they must have done something wrong to be a single parent, and that often is not the case. It is simply circumstances have changed and they're left to cope. And as a society, if we don't look after those that need help, then we're not worth a button, and that's just how I feel.
Kelly Marie, I'll just turn to you, just give yourself a wee introduction to how you got in touch with OPFS and maybe just a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Kelly Marie. I'm 18. I had Aaron when I was 16, and I got in touch with One Parent Family Scotland through my family nurse, as she recommended it as a good time for my son and me to find other people similar to our situation, and just giving us both time to bond with new people, as well as giving me a well-deserved break for 4 hours a week.
Kelly, and you were, is it 16 when you had Aaron? Yeah. I'm so impressed, by the way. He's just sitting in your lap, just with gorgeous eyes. It's very difficult not to be distracted by him. And what would you say it's like being a young parent?
Well, there's a lot of bad stigma around being a young parent, but to be fair, it's just the exact same as being a parent if you're 30 or 40. It is just the social side of it that's different. But raising your child, it doesn't really affect you what age you are.
Absolutely.
And you're younger and fitter.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. And that more energy.
Yeah.
So that's right. And I mean, it's certainly a great credit to you the way you're just sitting there.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think are the challenges of being a young parent?
Well, through my experience, I've received a lot of negative feedback from it. For example, when I was pregnant with Aaron, I started bleeding, and we thought I was going to miscarry. I'd called triage, and they'd told me to go in through Wishaw General A&E, and go straight up to triage, tell them what's happened, because I needed help. And the receptionist had me sitting in A&E for 6.5 hours while bleeding. No one would take me seriously. And I don't know if that was in regards to my age, but I told them exactly what I had to say, and my mum was on the phone to me the full time because I was in a state. And it wasn't until my mum came down and started arguing with the receptionist was I seen to, and luckily it wasn't a miscarriage. But that was really my first example of how bad this world can be towards younger people.
That must have been really distressing.
Yeah, it was. It was an awful experience. I don't recommend anyone going through that.
And do you think that perhaps if you'd been a few years older, you might not have had that experience?
Yeah, I definitely think if I did look a bit older, I would have been taken a lot more seriously. It does happen quite a lot.
People make judgments on you because of your age that absolutely no relation to what you're doing and how you're doing it.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard thing to bear as well. You're very calm when you related that story. I envy you your calmness, because I don't think I could have been as calm or as brave if I'd been in that position.
And you mentioned coming into contact with OPFS, One Parent Family Scotland, and that you've had something to do with the projects that they're running.
Yeah.
What sort of support have they given you?
Well, I started the Best Beginnings course.
Yeah.
And that was just a club where we met up every Thursday between 10 and 1 at Orbison Neighbourhood Centre, and the creche staff would look after the kids, and we would try bond and make some friends our own age that could relate to our situations, as well as giving us best tips on what people might not tell you about raising children and things like that. It was just really somewhere where you could sit there judgment free and tell people what you were facing in your parenthood with your child and see if people could relate to you.
Yeah.
It was a great.
Peer support is really useful, and because you don't feel different. You know someone else that's going through the same thing, and it really can help. And any parent can feel that, but I think especially for young parents, it's even more important that they know that they're not alone.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And are you working at the moment, or?
No, I'm currently a full-time mum.
Yeah.
I don't really I have a great support system, but I don't have anyone that can look after Aaron. My parents are old and they're quite unfit. They can't pick up Aaron. My dad's just recently suffered from blood disease, sepsis. Since then he's not made a full recovery, so I don't really have anyone to fall back on so I can go and get a job.
Yeah.
So now I'm just waiting to see if I could get Aaron into a nursery, even though he is so young, so I can go out and start working.
And are you on universal credit?
Yes.
Yeah. And so you've been on universal credit more or less since Aaron was born?
Since I was pregnant I've been on universal credit.
Right, okay. 55% of children with young mums in Scotland are in poverty.
Yes.
And over half of these, which is actually 54%, are in single parent families. And what do you think needs to happen to end poverty in young parent families?
Well, I think at the moment the Scottish Government's doing what it can, but it mitigates a lot. But the real problem is, I think, that when we had COVID and other people got the £20 uplift, nobody stopped immediately afterwards. And since then we've had the cost of living crisis, and it really is difficult to exist, never mind live, on universal credit. But if you're younger, there's real penalties against you being under 25. It's assumed that you will have in place a support network, and that you know other people will look after you, and that isn't always possible, and it isn't actually the way things should be. No one should be penalised on an age basis. We've got rid of the penalties on being older, if you like. You know, there's no fixed retirement age, etc. Now you can stay on work as long as you're able and as long as you want, but it's very difficult for young people under 25 at the moment, because they just don't get the correct benefits. I've done work with folk like Centrepoint, and with people, young people, homeless young people as well, and it's almost as if you're being tagged simply, and it is. It's not doesn't. It is the fact that you're tagged and treated differently because you're under 25, and that is wrong. That has always been wrong. And even if you go to work, you'll get a lower rate of pay and that's allowed because the minimum wage, and they call it a living wage, but it's not. It's going to be less for yourself when you start working, Kelly Marie. It's absolutely ridiculous, and you can't. Sometimes you look at things and you think, how did that happen? Well, it's this patriarchal almost society where you're expected to behave in a certain way, and if you behave differently or some of your circumstances change, you're penalised. Wrong.
Just for people listening, that is the case that if you are under 25, you get less universal credit than if you're over 25. Doesn't matter if you're a parent or a single person, it's the same rate for everyone.
Yes.
Were you aware of that difference?
No, not really, to be fair. I knew that what I was getting to live off of wasn't enough, but I thought that was the same for everyone, and when I found out it was different because I was young, it kind of gave me a shock.
And that's a penalty on Aaron as well as yourself, and it just fundamentally is not right. And as part of the Westminster team, SNP Westminster team, I've been trying. We raise this issue continuously, and we keep raising it because it's so important that you should not be treated differently. And you want to work, but you know that you'll get a lesser rate in some jobs. If it's a minimum pay job, for example, you'll get paid less than someone else who's 25, and that makes no sense. And the penalties that this government in Westminster have imposed on people, 2-child limit, all of that, it defies. It just stops people living the way they should. A society, I think, should be judged by how they treat the most deserving. And the fact that you are in your circumstances should not be an impediment to you getting the same as someone else. Just being under 25.
Yeah, I mean, effectively what it means is, in financial terms, is it means that there's a difference of young single parents are now £65 worse off per month, and young couple parents are £100 worse off per month. So in your case, Kelly Marie, that's like £65 less than somebody who's in the same circumstances as you, has a child, and they'll be getting £65 more per month. Like, what would that amount of money mean to you?
Well, it would mean I could live a bit more comfortably. Like, the money I do covers the house, and it covers food for me and Aaron. But that extra £65 would mean that if I needed anything new, I could supply that. But with the money I have now, I can't do that. I'm relying heavily off the baby bank in Hamilton for his clothes, and some toys even. Especially Christmas was a struggle. Being on my own with the little money I had. So yeah, that extra £65 would do a lot for me. If I needed new vests, I wouldn't need to go all the way to Hamilton to get some. I'd be able to pick them up, but at this point that extra £5 could mean £5 off the electricity, which I can't afford to do.
And that's the injustice of it all. That difference in the age thing, it's ludicrous. Because, as I said before, it impacts not just on you, Kelly Marie, but on Aaron as well. And we should look after. A society should look after its most vulnerable. And who's more vulnerable than a 1-year-old boy?
Absolutely. And if you did have the childcare and all of the support that you needed, what is it you want to do, and what is your ambition, or what's your passion in life?
Well, my dream job is to work for Red Crisis Scotland. I was sadly raped when I was 14, and I've kind of turned that into a passion on how to help other people through my own life experience. So that is my dream. It does take 2 years volunteering, so I was willing to pick up a part-time job, but if I do that on the minimum wage, I don't have enough to live off of, so I'm stuck in a rut at the minute.
That is absolutely awful. Would you need to gain any qualifications to do this?
Yeah, I need a counselling qualification, and I want to get a special children's qualification so I can work with people that are under 16 as well, because I feel like their voices need to be heard just as much as someone that is of a legal age. Because going through the process for me, there was only one person that could deal with me, because no one was qualified for someone my age.
Do you know, it's a great credit on you and to you that you're taking what was a horrendous experience and turning it into something positive so that you can look to the future to try and help others who are in the same age. And well done. And I don't want to sound patronising when I say that. I mean, it shows a strength and a courage that isn't always there for young folks. So well done on you.
Marion, I was just going to say there, we know that parents and people with caring responsibilities do face barriers to work, and it can be even harder for some groups of people, such as single parents and disabled parents as well. And I know that you are a disability spokesperson for the SNP as well.
Yeah.
If one person falls into more than one category, they're a young mum, as in Kelly Marie's case, and they've also got caring responsibilities. What can we do to try to break down these barriers? Because clearly Kelly Marie has got a lot to give. She's all this lived experience. She's got an ambition to work for Rape Crisis Scotland, to turn in her very negative experience into something that we could all learn from and benefit from.
Yeah, I think in general there has to be provision, proper childcare provision, which is growing, and there are opportunities, etc. To get, but first of all, getting Aaron into nursery. It's not easy because for a long time the provision wasn't increased. And I remember myself when I first went back to work, when my eldest was a year old, I wanted to go back to work. I couldn't find anywhere, and it was really, it has improved a bit, but still not enough. Although you will be able to access it if you can find the right nursery, you should be able to get the right childcare. But what often that means is council nurseries, for example, they don't do late hours, etc., etc. But I think for someone like yourself, we should. I don't know if you had to leave school early. Yeah. And so sometimes what happens is that you get into. I'm a former further education lecturer, so I know the benefits of college, and how much it can help to gain your qualifications later on. Not necessarily at school. It's often a much better experience for someone like yourself to be in college than it was being in school, and that you can then acquire the qualifications you need, and that should be much easier and made much more simple. But the kind of thing you want to do, not every college campus will do. So again, that involves travel, but again it comes back to, you want to be able to leave Aaron with someone you trust and you know will look after him properly. That requires often money. It also requires time and effort on your part sourcing it. So I'd love to wave a magic wand, and I know you'd like one waved as well. Progress has been made, and it doesn't do you any good for me to say things are better for you than they would be if you lived in England or Wales or Northern Ireland. But we still have to strive to make things better, because you at the moment can't contribute to the greater good the way you want to. So we have to try over the piece to make that happen. And one of the ways that can happen is if you get the proper rate of money from benefits, that anyone who's 20, it would be easier for someone who's 25 or over to get access to these things than it is you. And that's the barrier we have to break down.
And I know as an MP, Marion, your focus is trying to influence at UK level. And do you think there are any signs of positive changes for young parents and their children, things that could be realistically achieved at Westminster level?
I don't want to sound absolutely hopelessly pessimistic, but when universal credit itself needs to be looked at and scrapped, and we need to have a proper benefit system that allows people to live a decent life and to look to the future and be actively. It's an investment. Benefits are an investment in people's future, but that's not how it's seen at Westminster. Labour Tory governments have absolutely no intention of getting rid of universal credit and getting a system that's fairer. They have no intention of changing the rules for under 25s, and that's really important. That's what has to be done to improve lives and to make folk like yourself, Kelly Marie, an active participant in the economy. I mean, and one day you'll pay tax, and that helps other people, and that's really what needs to happen. And that kind of critical change won't, I think, unfortunately, won't happen. Since 2015, folk like Alison Thullis, my colleague, and David Linden have really focused on the younger age group, and Alison especially, she's the one who found the clause, the rape clause as they call it, to make sure that if you have more, you can't have more than 2 children or you don't get the benefit. All of these things are just need to be sorted, because otherwise you can't contribute effectively and provide more for Aaron than you're able to at present, and that's not something that anyone should think is okay, because it isn't.
Yeah, I mean, when we ran a campaign at One Parent Family Scotland previously about this and focused a lot on single parents like you, Kelly Marie, we wrote a letter to Westminster, the DWP came back to us and they said the reason for the discrepancy between ages is the fact that young people are more likely to live with their families. And we know, however, from the numbers of young parents that are claiming housing benefit, that actually that is not the case, and that they wouldn't be claiming housing benefit if they weren't living independently. What have you got to say about that, Kelly Marie?
Well, I think I know a good couple of people that are my age having children, and I think only one of them still stays with their parents. Everyone wants the best start for their child, and that does include having your own space. You don't want to try raise a child with your parent breathing down your throat because you're not doing things right, or
bad enough when Granny's visit.
So like I wanted Aaron to have his own room, and I wanted to be able to make him dinner the way I wanted to, or if he wanted to cry, I could let him cry without wondering if I'm interrupting someone that's sleeping for work in the morning or anything. So yeah, I thought it was best to move out, just for the sake of my parents and for me. And again, I only know one person that has got a child and is still living.
Are you okay? Is he okay?
Yeah.
Does he need his bottle? Oh, he's done so well, honestly. The youngest podcast member I've ever had.
Yeah, well, he's been better behaved than lots of adults, I know.
Yes, I'm sure. Something that OPFS has been discussing as an organisation is in terms of how to tackle some of the inequalities in the social security system is, could these inequalities be mitigated in Scotland now that Scotland has some devolved powers in terms of social security. And what we were thinking is that the Scottish Child Payment, which has recently been extended to include not just under sixes, and it's given to all parents who are on universal credit, whether they could provide a top-up payment using the Scottish Child Payment system to young parents to mitigate that. Do you think that approach is something that would be workable?
In theory, yes, but at the moment, as we all know, we're in a cost of living crisis and we're in hyperinflation, and that has had a significant effect on the money that the Scottish Government gets from the UK Government. So it's effectively been a cut to their funding, which impacts, and because it's a fixed budget, more or less a fixed budget, it means that if they do one piece of good, it often would take money from another. It's not to say that they don't want to, and I can't speak on behalf of the Scottish Government, of course, I'm not a member, but it's not that they don't want to, it's actual facts. If you want something additional, then there is only one pot it has to come out of, and it means it's something that the budget is now set for next financial year, and it means that it would have to be taken from something else. again, I can't say anything, but this is why, one of the main reasons why so many of us are focused on independence, because then we could run our affairs to the way that we think is best for people in Scotland. And I'm not ashamed of that. I think I firmly believe it's the right way. And there is, I mean, the work that Scottish Government has already done in mitigation for lots of the Westminster issues is testament to the fact that we want to do it. But unfortunately, it's not always possible, but it's always worth trying.
We will be obviously pushing for some sort of change just to help other people like Kelly Marie in their situations. Are trying our best to participate in society and give back and get into employment. I think that's something which is often misunderstood. Going back to stigma again, and about single parents, is that they are just that narrative of living off the state.
Yes, and that it's not always through. It's not always through choice. The circumstances that dictate how you often what happens to you, but also the fact that it becomes there are real barriers to you getting into work. And one of them being that even when you do as a young parent, you will not get the same pay rate as somebody who's 25. Now, I don't want to depress you anymore, Kelly. That's not my intention, but I think we have to be realistic. And that's one thing at Westminster that could change so much, is if they started paying people under 25 the same rate as people over 25 as a minimum.
Kelly Marie, if there was one thing that you could say to Westminster, to Scottish Government, or to anybody that's listening, what would be that message?
That message would be I'm the same as anyone of any age. I'm a parent, and my age doesn't affect that. So I think that the discrimination against younger people should be scrapped altogether, because it's not right.
I only have one thing to say, and Kelly Marie's not like other people. She is a real shining example and a complete opposite of what people and how people consider young single parents. So well done, you.
Absolutely, well done, and thank you both for talking to me today. And there's so many people that are going to be really interested and learn a lot from, particularly from you, Kelly Marie, and thank you, Marion, for joining me today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for listening, and if you'd like to take part in a podcast recording, please get in touch by dropping us an email at info@opfs.org.uk. And to listen to more episodes, please subscribe to our podcast channel. Thank you.